Hi, I'm Ariel. This is my English story. When I first heard English, it felt like hearing a language from another world. The words sounded strange, and I felt lost. It was like everyone had a secret code that I didn't know. But now, I speak English well. I can talk to friends, read books, and write sentences. It wasn't easy, but I did it. Let me take you back to the beginning. I remember sitting in front of the TV as a kid. The characters on the screen spoke in English, laughing and chatting. They seemed happy, but I couldn't join in. I felt like I was missing out on something amazing. I wanted to understand. I wanted to be a part of that world. At school, English was one of the subjects, but it felt like the hardest one. My teacher wrote words on the board and said them out loud, but to me, they were just sounds. No meaning, no sense. My classmates seemed to get it. They nodded, repeated the words, and even made sentences. But I sat quietly, afraid the teacher might call on me. What if I said something wrong? What if they laughed at me? One day, I decided I didn't want to feel like that anymore. I wanted to learn. I wanted to understand those shows on TV and talk with my friends in English. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to try. So I started with the basics. The alphabet. I practiced each letter one by one. A, B, C. At first my letters were shaky. Some were too big, others too small. But I kept at it. Soon, they looked right. It was a small victory, but it felt like a big one. I was proud of my progress. Then I moved on to simple words. Cat, dog, apple. These were things I saw every day. I made flashcards with pictures and words. I looked at them often, saying the words out loud. Slowly, the words started to stick. When I saw a cat, I could say cat. When I held an apple, I could say apple. It felt good to understand and connect the words with things around me. Practicing every day became important. I set aside time each day to study. Sometimes I was tired, and sometimes I wanted to play instead. But I remembered my goal, to learn English. So I kept practicing even when it was hard. Each day, I learned a little more. I began to make sentences. I am Ariel. This is a book. They were simple sentences, but they meant a lot to me. They were my first steps in speaking English. Practicing with my friends helped too. They were patient, correcting me when I made mistakes and cheering me on when I got it right. Their support made a big difference. Speaking out loud was scary at first. I worried about making mistakes and what others might think. But I learned that mistakes were part of learning. Each mistake taught me something new. Over time, I felt less shy and more confident. I spoke more and more, feeling the language become a part of me. Reading and listening were also important. I started with children's books, simple stories with pictures. I read them out loud, repeating the words until they sounded right. I also listened to English songs. Music made learning fun. I sang along, even if I didn't understand all the words. Slowly, the songs made more sense. I watched English cartoons where the characters spoke clearly. Watching cartoons helped me learn new words and phrases. It was fun to follow their stories. Writing was another step. I began with simple sentences. I like cats. Today is sunny. I wrote in a journal every day. My sentences were short, but they helped me practice. I paid attention to spelling, wanting to get the words right. Spelling was tricky at first. Some words were hard, but I practiced, using a dictionary to check my spelling. Each day, my writing got better. I took small steps. I didn't try to learn everything at once. Focusing on one thing at a time made learning easier. Each small step added up, and over time, I saw big improvements. I joined an English club at school. We met every week, talked about different topics, and played games. It was fun and helped me practice speaking. I made new friends who were also learning English. We helped each other, sharing tips and encouragement. I also found language partners online. We talked through video calls, helping each other learn. It was like having a friend to study with. We practiced speaking and listening, correcting each other's mistakes. This helped me a lot. I learned that asking for help was important. I didn't have to learn alone. Learning English changed my life. It opened new doors. I could talk to more people and understand more things. I felt more confident, proud of how far I had come. Now I want to help others. If you are learning English, know that you can do it too. Start small, practice every day, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Ask for help when you need it. Keep going, even when it's hard. You can do it too, just like I did. Looking back, I realized those small steps were so important. They built the foundation for my journey. They taught me patience, perseverance, and the value of small victories. Learning wasn't a straight path. It had ups and downs. But every time I took a step forward, I got closer to my goal. I continued building my vocabulary, learning words I encountered every day. These were words that surrounded me. Things I saw, touched, and used. Cat, dog, apple, book, simple words that made up my world. I made flashcards, writing the English word on one side and drawing a picture on the other. I practiced with these cards every day. My friends and I would quiz each other, helping each other improve. It was fun and effective. The more I practiced, the more confident I felt. Each day, I learned a few new words. I set goals for myself, 10 new words a week. I checked them off as I learned them, feeling proud with each word mastered. My family supported me, encouraging me to speak English at home. They listened as I read my journal and helped me with tricky words. Their support boosted my confidence. They showed me that learning a new language is possible, one step at a time. I discovered that learning English was more than just words and grammar. It was about understanding people and connecting with them. It was about experiencing a new world, full of stories, songs, and adventures. English opened a door to a new culture, and I was excited to step through it. Speaking fluently became my next big challenge. I practiced every day, speaking in front of a mirror, with friends, and even with strangers. It was hard at first, but as I got used to the sound of my own voice speaking English, I felt more confident. I joined conversation groups, where we role-play different scenarios, ordering food, asking for directions, talking about hobbies. These activities helped me feel prepared for real-life conversations. Overcoming shyness took time. I reminded myself that everyone makes mistakes. I learned to laugh at my own mistakes and see them as opportunities to learn. This shift in mindset helped me relax and speak more freely. The encouragement from friends and family was a big part of this journey. They praised my efforts, making me feel valued. Their support made me believe I could succeed. Sure, let's continue the story, building on the previous content while adding elements of depth, emotion, and intrigue to engage the reader further. I'll weave in dramatic turns, humor, and emotional growth, maintaining a narrative flow that keeps the story connected. As my English journey continued, there were days when everything felt like it was falling into place. Words, sentences, conversations. I could talk about my favorite shows, share my thoughts with friends, and read books without stopping to look up every word. But then there were days when it felt like I had forgotten everything. I'd freeze when someone asked me a question, and my mind would go blank. It was as if all the English I had learned vanished into thin air. One day at school, during English class, the teacher called on me to read a passage out loud. My hands started to shake, and my heart pounded. I took a deep breath and began. At first, everything was fine, but then, halfway through, I stumbled on a word I hadn't seen before. My voice faltered. I could feel the eyes of my classmates on me. I felt the familiar fear creeping back, fear of making a mistake, of being laughed at. I could almost hear the whispers, the quiet giggles. I wanted to disappear, to vanish into the ground like a shadow when the sun fades. But then, something happened. One of my friends, Ben, spoke up. "You've got this, Ariel," he said, smiling at me. His words cut through the fear like a light in the dark. I smiled back and tried again, this time slower, sounding out the word piece by piece. When I finally got it right, the class clapped. It wasn't the whole class, just a few, but it was enough. My fear melted away, replaced by a warmth that filled me from the inside out. I realized then that it wasn't about being perfect. It was about trying, about pushing through, even when it was hard. After that day, I became less afraid of speaking in class. I started to volunteer to read out loud, to answer questions, even when I wasn't sure. Each time I raised my hand, it felt like a small victory. But I still had moments of doubt. Times when the words felt heavy on my tongue, and I wished I could speak as easily as my friends did. One of those moments happened when our English teacher, Mrs. Taylor, announced that we would have a talent show. She encouraged us to perform in English to showcase our new language skills. At first, I thought it was a joke. Me, performing in front of everyone? No way. But then, Mrs. Taylor came up to me after class. She said she believed in me and that she thought I had a talent for storytelling. "Ariel, you have a gift for making people feel. You should tell a story," she suggested, her eyes full of warmth and hope. Her words stayed with me for days. I kept thinking about them, feeling a mix of fear and excitement. Part of me wanted to try to stand up and share my story, but the other part of me, the part that still felt small and scared, wanted to hide. What if I messed up? What if everyone laughed? The doubts buzzed in my head like bees trapped in a jar. I went home that day and sat alone in my room, staring at the ceiling. I thought about the journey I had taken so far, from not understanding a single word to being able to write and speak sentences. I had come so far, but this felt different. It felt bigger, like a mountain I wasn't sure I could climb. My mom noticed my silence and sat beside me. "What's on your mind?" she asked softly. I told her about the talent show and my fears. She listened, nodding as I spoke. When I finished, she took my hands in hers. "Ariel, remember the time you fell off your bike?" she asked, smiling gently. I laughed, thinking back to when I was younger and how I had cried, convinced I'd never ride again. "You got back up," she continued. "You kept trying until you could ride without falling. This is the same, just in a different way." Her words struck a chord. She was right. Learning English was just like learning to ride my bike. It took falling and getting back up over and over again. I decided that night to give the talent show a try. If I stumbled, I'd get back up. If I forgot a word, I'd keep going. I would tell my story, not for anyone else, but for myself. I spent the next few days preparing. I wrote down my story, the one I had carried with me for so long. It was about my journey, about the struggle of learning a new language, about the fear and the small victories. I practiced in front of the mirror, over and over, imagining the audience in front of me. I even practiced with my friends who cheered me on and gave me tips. Ben, who had been there for me that day in class, helped me rehearse, offering me the kind of encouragement that felt like a lifeline. The night of the talent show arrived, and my heart felt like it was going to burst out of my chest. The stage lights were bright, and I could see the shadows of the audience, their faces blurred in the dim light. For a moment, my mind went blank. I felt the fear gripping me again, making my hands tremble. But then, I remembered all the times I had fallen and gotten back up. I took a deep breath and started to speak. "Hi, I'm Ariel," I began, my voice shaky but steady. When I first heard English, it felt like magic, a language from a world I couldn't reach. As I spoke, the fear slowly faded, replaced by something else. I felt a connection, like a thread tying me to the audience. They were silent, listening, their eyes fixed on me. I told them about my struggles, about my victories, about the time Ben had helped me in class and how my mom had given me the courage to try. I saw smiles, nods, and even a few teary eyes. I realized then that I wasn't alone. My story was their story too, in some way. When I finished, there was a moment of silence that felt like a lifetime. Then the audience erupted in applause. I stood there. I had done it. I had told my story. And not just that, I had connected with others. I had made them feel. The applause washed over me like a wave, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged. I felt seen. After the show, Ben and my friends rushed to my side, congratulating me. Mrs. Taylor gave me a big hug. "I knew you could do it," she said, her eyes twinkling. "You have a gift, Ariel. Never forget that." My parents hugged me tight, my mom's eyes full of pride. It was a moment I would carry with me forever. From that day on, everything changed. I started to see English not as a mountain to climb, but as an adventure. Each new word was like a treasure, each sentence like a path leading me to new places. I joined more clubs, took part in conversations, and even started helping others who were struggling like I once had. I met a girl named Lily who reminded me of myself when I first started. She was shy, afraid of making mistakes, and I could see the fear in her eyes. I sat with her one day during lunch. "I know it's scary," I told her, "but trust me, it gets better. You just have to keep trying." She looked at me, her eyes wide with hope. "But what if I mess up?" she asked. I smiled and said, "Then you get back up, and you try again. That's how you learn." Over time, Lily and I became friends, and I watched her grow more confident each day. Seeing her progress felt like watching my own journey all over again. Life is funny sometimes. The very thing I was once afraid of, speaking English, became the thing I loved the most. It was like finding a key that opened a door to a new world, full of people, stories, and adventures. And the best part? I wasn't just part of it. I was helping others become part of it too. One day, Mrs. Taylor asked me to speak to a new group of students, beginners who were just starting their English journey. I felt a rush of excitement and a bit of nervousness, but mostly I felt ready. I stood in front of them, remembering the fear I once had, and shared my story. I told them that it was okay to be afraid, okay to make mistakes. I told them that they were not alone. As I spoke, I saw the same looks of hope and fear in their eyes that I had felt years ago. I smiled, feeling a sense of connection. This was where I was meant to be, and my journey had only just begun. Of course, let's continue the story, maintaining the emotional depth and narrative engagement while developing the plot further. I'll add new layers of complexity, humor, and heartfelt moments to keep the story dynamic and evolving. As I continued sharing my story with the new students, I noticed a young boy in the back row. He had his arms crossed tightly, and his eyes looked tired, like someone carrying a weight too heavy for him. I could see a part of myself in him. The fear, the uncertainty. After the session, he stayed behind, lingering near the doorway as if he wanted to say something but didn't know how. I approached him with a smile. "Hey, I'm Ariel," I said, extending my hand. He looked at me, his eyes guarded, before he finally shook my hand. "I'm Sam," he replied, his voice barely a whisper. I could feel the hesitation in his grip, the uncertainty. "It's okay to feel nervous," I continued, hoping to ease his worry. I felt the same way when I started learning English. Sam's eyes flickered with a hint of curiosity, but the doubt remained. "I just don't think I'm good enough," he admitted, his voice breaking slightly. "No matter how hard I try, it feels like I'm always one step behind." I felt a pang in my chest. His words were a mirror reflecting my own struggles from years ago. I knew how that kind of doubt could grow, becoming a shadow that looms over every small victory. "You know, Sam," I said, leaning down to his level, "I used to feel that way too. There were days when I thought I'd never get it right, when everything felt impossible. But then I learned something important." He looked at me, a spark of curiosity in his eyes. "What did you learn?" he asked, a little hope creeping into his voice. I smiled, remembering the moment it had all clicked for me. "I learned that every time you try, even if it feels like you're failing, you're actually getting stronger. It's like climbing a mountain. It's not about how fast you reach the top. It's about the strength you build along the way." I could see the idea taking root in his mind, and for the first time he smiled, a small, tentative smile, but a smile nonetheless. Over the next few weeks, I made it my mission to help Sam. I invited him to study sessions, introduced him to my friends, and encouraged him to join our English club. At first, he was shy, often hanging back, watching rather than participating. But slowly, he started to open up. One day, during a group activity, he even made a joke in English. It was simple, but it made everyone laugh, and I could see the pride light up his face. It was a small victory, but I knew how much courage it took for him to speak up. But then, just as things seemed to be getting better, something unexpected happened. One afternoon, Sam stopped coming to our sessions. At first, I thought maybe he was busy or had a family commitment. But when a whole week passed without seeing him, I started to worry. I asked around, but no one seemed to know where he was. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I remembered how hard it was to stay motivated when things got tough, and I worried that Sam had given up. So one day after school, I decided to visit his house. I found his address in the student directory and rode my bike through the neighborhood until I reached his house. It was a small, cozy place with a garden full of flowers, but the curtains were drawn, and it felt strangely quiet. I knocked on the door, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. What if he didn't want to see me? What if I was too late? After a few moments, the door creaked open, and Sam's mom appeared. She looked tired, her eyes red as if she'd been crying. "Hello," she said, her voice heavy. "Can I help you?" "Hi, I'm Ariel, a friend of Sam's from school," I explained, trying to sound as friendly as possible. "I haven't seen him at our sessions lately, and I was just wondering if he's okay." Sam's mom hesitated, and for a moment I thought she might shut the door. But then she sighed deeply. "He's been struggling," she admitted. "He's always so hard on himself, and lately he's felt like he's not good enough. He's been staying home, not wanting to face anyone." Her words hit me like a punch. I understood that feeling all too well. The feeling of wanting to hide when things got tough, of retreating when the fear became too overwhelming. "Can I see him?" I asked, feeling a sense of urgency. I think I can help." Sam's mom looked uncertain for a moment, but then she nodded and led me to his room. When I walked in, I found Sam sitting on his bed, staring at his notebook. His shoulders were hunched, and he didn't look up when I entered. "Hey, Sam," I said softly. "I missed you at the sessions." He glanced up, and for a moment I saw the spark of the boy who had made everyone laugh not long ago. But it quickly faded, replaced by a look of defeat. "I'm just not good at this," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I try, but it's too hard." I sat beside him, thinking of the right words to say. "You know, Sam, I was just like you," I began. "I wanted to give up so many times, but I realized that the only way to move forward was to keep trying, even when it felt impossible. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to keep showing up." He didn't say anything for a moment, but I could see the wheels turning in his mind. "Do you remember the story you told last time?" I asked, hoping to bring back a positive memory. The one about the lost puppy who found its way home? A small smile appeared on his face. Yeah, I remember, he said, a hint of pride in his voice. Everyone laughed. I nodded. Exactly. You made people happy, Sam, and you can do that again, but only if you keep trying. Sam was quiet, but then he nodded slowly. Okay, he whispered. I'll try. I felt a rush of relief and joy. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking, and by the end of it, I saw a new determination in his eyes. He wasn't ready to give up, and neither was I. We made a pact to face the challenges together, one step at a time. The next day, Sam showed up to our session with a bright smile. He participated more, asked questions, and even volunteered to read out loud. It was like watching a flower bloom after a long winter, and it made me realize how important it was to have someone believe in you. It reminded me of how my friends and family had supported me, and I felt grateful for all those who had helped me on my journey. As Sam and I grew closer, our friendship deepened. We would often laugh about our mistakes, like the time I accidentally said ship instead of sheep and ended up confusing everyone during a reading exercise. So you're telling me there's a ship in the field, Ariel? Sam teased, and we both burst out laughing. Moments like these made learning fun, turning our challenges into memories that we could laugh about later. Months passed, and soon enough, it was time for another talent show. This time, Sam was the one who suggested we perform together. We could tell a story, he said, his eyes shining with excitement, like the one you told me about climbing the mountain. I felt a surge of pride. Sam was no longer the shy boy I had met. He was confident, ready to face the world. We practiced for weeks, rehearsing every line, every movement, until it felt perfect. On the night of the show, as we stood backstage, I felt a familiar nervousness. But when I looked at Sam, standing tall and smiling, I felt a wave of calm wash over me. We've got this, he said, giving me a thumbs up. And for the first time, I believed it. Our performance was a success. We told our story about climbing mountains, facing fears, and finding strength in friendship. The audience clapped and cheered, and I saw Sam's face light up with joy. We had done it together. And in that moment, I knew that our journey was just beginning. Thank you so much for watching and being part of our journey. If you enjoyed learning with stories and graded readers, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Stay tuned for more exciting lessons and tips right here on Easy English Class. Let's continue learning English together, step by step. See you in the next video.